Hey everyone, TimaeuSS here and welcome to another AFK journey video. So in today's video, we'll take a deep dive into the beginner's tier list for the game AFK Journey and of course showcase some of these overpowered units in the PTR server as well. As you can see, we've got quite a ton of these units built up and we can definitely take a look at why they rank as highly as they do. However, I do want to preface this by saying that in this video, I'll show you how to use the tier list properly because as you can see, there are different categories and we'll tackle the first 2 to 4 weeks of your AFK journey because the late game and some of the boss fight units are going to be very different meta wise, but we'll of course talk about them and touch upon them very briefly. But if you want to take a look at the written version of this guide or take a look at some of the lower ranked units in the early part, of course I will leave a link down below to the Pridewind guide. You can check them out, they're fantastic, and if you want to try out the game, use my link down below to download AFK Journey now. But without further ado, let's tackle the first S+ tier list unit, which is Cesia.
Listen intently to the pain and screams played by my own hands as my parting gift to the world. Here's my final requiem.
Cesia will be the first S+ and beginner's tier list unit that we'll talk about because everyone will be obtaining a copy of her very early in the game. And that's right, in the tutorial multi or the first temple that you do, you're guaranteed to get Cesia, and she is fantastic for the early to mid game map progress because she summons Mr. Carl, as I like to call it, to assist her in the battle. The monster or the summon stuns and does massive amounts of damage, and she also buffs herself as well as the summon's attack speed, along with dealing extra enormous damage every few normal attacks. And on top of that, later on she'll unlock additional attack speed buff to herself and also even more attack speed buff when under the presence of the summon. Now her drawbacks are going to be that the ult does take some time to activate, and unfortunately in the later stages of the various game modes she does fall off, so kind of gonna be very good for you from the early to mid game, but later on does taper off. But don't worry, because in this game investments in unit are decently well returned in the sense that you can always swap other units that invest in right to the forefront of your formation with how the games and levels go. So yes, without further ado, let's talk about the next one.
You must never tear down the curtain to peek at the secrets within. Because this curiosity of yours might just cost you everything.
Vela is the next S+ damage dealer on this beginner's tier list and the first focus rated banner unit as well, which means you can pull your resources and pull multiple copies of her and unlock her EX weapon skill, which allows her to go invis, giving her greater survivability and improving her damage output in the long run. Now her unique core mechanic allows her to switch from her ranged Sky Blaster mode into a melee sword mode, and also her ultimate changes into a massive amount of true damage attack when she's in the sword mode. She's truly unique in the sense that even at low copies, she'll be able to melt the backline in the early to mid game, and later on if you pull for multiple copies, she's gonna be super strong even in some stages of PvE, just due to the fact that when bosses drop below 50%, she'll be able to increase her damage output substantially. Now her ultimate, we already talked about it, she can change interchangeably between her range as well as her melee mode, and her passives allow her to mark enemies and attack them and absorb their energy. She is also able to reduce the enemy's haste, making them act slower, and also increase her own attack every time a non-summon enemy is defeated. Now in battle, you can see her in action, and she does start off with this range attack, and when her gauge is full, then she can ult, go for the swishies in the back, deal massive amounts of damage, and then enter sword mode, which means wrecking havoc in the backlines and killing all the supports and the healers. Now, before we move on to the S+ tier supports, I just want to draw attention to the S category. Now, these units we'll touch upon very briefly near the latter parts of the video. However, units like Odie and Smokey are super strong across the mid to late game, as well as various boss fights, especially the Dream Realm, right? So if you want to take a look at their overall performance, again, this video is going to be about the beginner's guide, the early to mid game. However, the overall performance can be seen in the table mode, and you can see, for example, example, Odie here is really strong past the early game, S+ tier across various boss content as well as mid to late game. So I've seen a lot of players use Odie and Smokey as your Mauler core for that faction bonus, along with 3 Graveborn units, and push map that way. So don't count the S tier units out. However, again, this guide is going to be the first few weeks of your AFK journey gameplay. So we're going to focus on the S+ tier units next, starting us off with Huan. Huan is a light bear range support unit and one of the 3 supports that you're guaranteed to have. That's right, this game really helps you secure your early game team by giving you Cesia for free in the first multi, and then giving you 1 out of the 3 healers, either Huan, Rowan, or Smokey. You're guaranteed to have 1 out of the 3. And Rowan, as we know, of course, is from the top-up bonus. So you ideally want to either get Huan or Smokey, or if you're going for Rowan dupes, that's fine as well. But 1 of the 3 supports are basically guaranteed. Huan is fantastic as a unit. She offers team-wide healing to the rest of the party, and also offers dispellable debuff removals for the team. So you can see that in battle, she is going to be able to keep the HP of your units really high, and on top of that, she is going to be able to provide AoE healing. So a fantastic teammate as well. And next is Riner. Now, as a light and darkness unit, it's not going to be easy to pull multiple copies of Riner. However, as a 1 copy wonder, that's right, you can just have the base copy of Riner and he'll be able to put in a lot of work because his CC, his crowd control, is second to none. Now, starting off the fight, he's going to be able to stun the enemy as well as do damage to that unit. But the core mechanic is switching the enemy's position with an allied one if they were symmetrical when the battle starts. And this is particularly crucial because he's able to disrupt the enemy's backline, which is fantastic. And if you do manage to get Riner to multiple copies, the EX weapon debuff is super good because it's either going to boost the allies' attack or lower the enemy's attack depending on the difference. And last but not least, the ultimate will be able to allow Riner to teleport to another dimension with an enemy, effectively taking the enemy out for the duration of the fight. So this is really good. The amount of CCs and crowd control and disruption Riner is able to provide will easily turn the tides of the battle, and ultimately a super strong unit that is capable in both PvP as well as PvE. And Rowan is our next S+ tier support, and I use the term healer very loosely for Rowan because in the early to mid game, Rowan will definitely keep up the heals. However, his main role is going to be replenishing the energy for the team, because if you guys played any other games that required, characters to fill up their energy gauge before using the ultimate, you'll know how valuable energy truly is going to be. Looking at his skills, Rowan will be able to heal your allies, and especially the low HP allies that drop below a certain percentage, by offering them HP potions. That's right. And he's also able to absorb the enemy's attack by summoning Braddock. Later on, with multiple copies, Rowan's true potential is unlocked as he will boost the entire team's haste, and haste allows the entire team to, of course, act faster and also filling up that energy gauge as a result. The ultimate is essentially, again, more energy gauge replenishment, and really good. That means because your team is able to ult faster than the enemy team, both in PvE along with PvP, you'll be able to use your ultimate faster. Now, speaking of Rowan, he's available in various places, which means obtaining copies for Rowan will be easy. Not only is he part of the first 3 units that you'll be able to get guaranteed, he's also part of the top-up bonus, which means by spending just $1 or 99 cents based wherever you are, you'll be able to get Rowan as a copy, along with him being exchangeable in the store and also being part of the 7-day chest. So you'll be able to get multiple copies of Rowan relatively quickly and then unlocking his full potential. Last and certainly not least on S+ tier list is Thorin. Thorin is honestly perfect. His kit is so bonkers and truly deserving of the tier 0 status, or the S+ tier on this, as the only tank that has made it there in the early to mid game. Now, his ultimate allows him to charge up, and he is unaffected by CC during that time. He gains lifesteal, and all of the damage done to him will be reflected to the enemy with a significant multiplier. He also is able to, as a passive, drain HP from the enemy with the highest HP and revive himself once after he has been defeated needed, which is really good because he's already super tanky. And his normal attack and skills also increases his energy recovery, which is even more bonkers because he's already going to be tanking, so he's going to be taking a lot of damage, and that's going to regen his energy. So all in all, Thorin is the perfect damage dealer, able to tank, deal damage, as well as counter CC when he's got his ultimate active, and even when everything else fails, revive and come back for a second fight. And that's it. These are the S+ tier units in the early game. Now moving forward to the mid game, the S+ tier does not change much besides Odie. And like I've said, Odie is honestly super strong and one of my favorite units in the game. If we take a look at the skill, his ultimate allows him to fire a corrosive dart, which does a poison continuous damage and cannot be dispelled. And this is particularly good, especially against bosses, because his rest of the kit will revolve around this poison dart. He can also deal triple damage attacks to the enemy alongside normal attacks that poisons the target, and also allowing the poison to stack up to 20 stacks. He also increases his own attack speed during the battle, and the most important aspect of Odie is that he is able to defeat poison enemies when they fall below a certain percentage, and that also works in PvE as well. Super strong. And of course in PvP he does fantastic damage there as well. If you take a look at the gameplay of Odie, he is often paired up. Usually you have your three factions, your Graveborn, let's say 3 factions, and then you pair up Odie and Smokey, and those two core maulers, like I've mentioned before, will be absolutely insane in keeping the rest of the enemies in check. And even if front line falls down, Odie is able to dish out heavy amounts of damage and clean up the rest of the enemies. And speaking of Smokey, Odie's mauler partner in crime, Smokey is an S tier support that's able to heal the team, and also one of the 3 free supports that are guaranteed to get, alongside being able to buff the allies' attack and recover their energy. So we can see here the common theme is, this skill doing a lot more than just healing, because this aroma range, the downside of that is it needs to be in range, in the sense that the allies needs to be somewhat huddled with Smokey, but the aroma will heal the ally, providing attack buffs alongside energy regen. So you can see here in a combat, if Smokey is too far in the back, we're not going to heal up Thorin in the combat. So if we try again, but move Smokey forward, making sure that Thorin is in this AoE heal, you can see that Thorin will be alive a lot longer and also able to get the ultimate off because of the heal, which means changing, of course, the tide of the battle. So placement is going to be very important, and also later on against bossing and certain content, Smokey is going to be extremely strong. And that's it. That is the beginner's guide tier list for the launch of AFK Journey. We've discussed the S+ tier units and why they're so good, alongside some of the S ranked unit that will scale much better later on. Now for the rest of the S categories, I haven't used a lot of them. I do have experience with Viperion. Viperion is an AoE damage dealer, often used as the 3rd core to your Graveborn combo, alongside with Cesia and Thorin. I've also used Laika in the beginning, who was a support that everyone will get for free from the pre-reg reward, but because you're given 1 out of the 3 better supports, quote-unquote healers, so Laika doesn't see a lot of play after that. And last but not least, Brutus is the other unit that is basically a 1-copy wonder, just like Riner in the early game. You can slot him in and he'll be a sub-tank, also dealing decent amounts of damage. And when your main tank dies, or in the middle of the game, Brutus, after his energy gauge is filled, he's able to taunt the enemy and draw aggro to himself, taking some pressure off of the main tank. And even if he drops to 1 HP, he'll be able to cling on for just a few seconds longer with his passive, and that allows the rest of the team to kind of just do insane amounts of damage to the enemy while he's drawing all of the aggro. Now the rest of the units later on, like I've said, in the late game, you can see definitely things do change, and I'll be releasing another video talking about the tier list changes in the late game, because Iron and Carolina, these units do really well when certain conditions are met and after they get multiple copies. But usually that's about 1 month down the line, unless you're a mega whale. If you're a mega whale, of course, the later parts of the story, you'll be able to reach that much sooner, and also with multiple copies of these units, you'll be able to unlock their potential much earlier as well. But however, for the vast majority of the players that are either free to play or small spenders, your early to mid game tier list is this, and if you build accordingly, you will be able to push ahead quite far. But don't worry too much about wasting your resources besides pull resources, because even if you just get 1 or 2 copies of the initial units, your levels won't be capped, and you can switch your units relatively with ease to build them later on, because the levels are all shared across the units. Anyhow, it's TimaeuSS here. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be releasing a lot of AFK journey guides in the future, so if you're interested, let me know and leave a link down below that you can use to download the game. And thank you again to everyone watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye now.